For today's classic interview, we're going back to a true classic. I interviewed Bill Tatro back in February of 2015. And at the time, Bill didn't believe the Obama jobs numbers that were coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's something that Donald Trump had in common with him until the Bureau of Labor Statistics started reporting on Trump's job creation. And I think that as you watch this interview and listen to this interview, you will be reminded of the acute absurdity of what we are hearing now from the Trump administration about how we can obviously trust the jobs numbers from the same organization now that Trump is president, numbers and an organization that we simply could not trust when the president of the United States was Barack Obama. Let's get to my interview with Bill Tatro from 2015. I'm joined today by Bill Tatro, who's a teacher, talk show host, author, lecturer, and columnist at townhall.com. Bill, I was recently reading one of the articles on your website, and I'm kind of confused by it. So a good place, I think, might be for you to explain exactly what your position is on the kind of modern economy of today and on President Obama. In this article, you do point out some of the positive things that we're seeing in the economy, but it seems like you hesitate to say that this is truly a sign of good things. But maybe my read of it is just off. Talk to us about that.
Well, David, one of the problems that you've got with this, well, I should say any administration, but it seems to be more prevalent with the current one, is that they've taken the old adage of the question that was asked to the government official, what's 2 plus 2? And he said, what do you need it to be? And the problem is that if we go back, let's go back 6 years when Mr. Obama first came in. The Bureau of Labor Statistics uses, when they give out the jobs report, and we'll get it this Friday, they give what they call the birth death. And the birth death is the number of jobs that were created that month by new businesses that were birthed, number of jobs that were lost by the businesses that died, the deaths, and that was it. And then you net them together. Historically, with Clinton, the Bushes, et cetera, it was, plus or minus 10, 15,000 either way. And then after a year, it would be corrected. Well, as we got in deeper and deeper into the Obama administration, you would find that it was plus 125,000 jobs, plus 150,000 jobs. These weren't actual jobs. This was just assumptions that were made by somebody that they thought that would be it. And so every time when you hear that last time we got 300,000 jobs, you have to look at birth death. After 12 months, it's corrected and it's put on the back pages. So the misinformation that's put forward that as we look at the unemployment rate, 5.6%, but that's discounting millions of people out of the participation pool.
Okay, but hold on a second, Bill, because there's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
Is your contention that unemployment is being measured differently today than it was under other presidents?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're looking at people who, if I go out, if I'm unemployed, if I'm a chemist who can't get a job, and all of a sudden I mow my neighbor's lawn and get $20 to do it, I'm now not unemployed.
No, that's not true. If you go, that's simply untrue, Bill. And I think that most of our audience, after hearing me talk about this for a long time, knows that if you go out and mow your neighbor's lawn for $20, that has no impact whatsoever on whether the government considers you unemployed or not. Because if I lose a job and I file for unemployment, it doesn't matter whether I go and collect those $20 or not. If I'm considered unemployed, and that's just a factually untrue statement. I don't know where you came up with that.
Well, I disagree. All right. I mean, then we have
that.
that.
But you disagree, but it's not a matter of opinion. That's not how the Bureau of Labor Statistics measures an unemployed person. We have to be upfront with the audience here.
Well, I understand that. So what you're saying is that the number of people who are not part of the participation pool, and if there are you would then say that the number of people in the participation pool is accurate?
No, what I would say is that we are measuring unemployment, if we look at the U3 and the U6, in the exact same way today that we have done all the way back to Ronald Reagan. And there is absolutely no difference in the gap between the U3 and the U6, which includes, as you say, discouraged workers, those who are underemployed, etc. there is no difference in the space between the U3 and the U6 today as there was under Ronald Reagan, under George H.W. Bush, Clinton, W. Bush, etc. The idea that today the numbers are particularly deceptive because we're not considering discouraged workers and people no longer looking for work is flat out false. We have the data.
I disagree. And that's that. I totally disagree.
But so present, what data do you have from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that tells us that the U6 now relative to the U3 is particularly bad compared to Ronald Reagan? I mean, it just, that's not the data that exists.
Then your contention is, and
it's not my contention. It's just the BLS data.
That the participation pool is accurate.
What I'm saying is that today, if we talk about the U3 compared to the U3 under Reagan or Bush or whoever, is measured the same way. But if we want to talk about the U6, it's also measured the same way. The problem is that many people today who want to disparage President Obama's economy say that he is presenting the U3 number as if it were the U6, and that's just simply not the case.
I don't think he's presenting U3 as a U6. I think that this administration gives misinformation.
But the data is from the BLS, and they've been presenting it in the same way since Reagan. So when you say that they give misinformation, what does that mean?
Well, if you simply take away the participation pool and you reduce the participation pool, you've in effect reduced your divisor. Why don't we just go to 4%? Based upon what you're saying, we will get to 4% unemployment, as President has said, very quickly. Now, we're not even discussing the quality of the job. We're not even discussing if it's the majority is in bartenders and people.
Okay, but Bill, now you're moving the goalposts, because let's have the conversation about wages and job quality. I'm glad to have that conversation. I have that conversation with economists all the time. But that's a different issue than to say that right now, because of discouraged workers, we have a far worse situation than we did under Ronald Reagan's 6% unemployment, for example. That's just not supported by the data. Now, I would grant you that wages are absolutely lagging jobs in this recovery. That very often happens. We've finally seen some uptick in wages over the last year, although not last month. But do you realize that these are two separate issues?
Oh, absolutely. There's no, I'm glad that we can come together on something, and that the wages are lagging. But I just, in your discussion of the participation pool, I'm sorry, I'm not on that page, David.
Yeah, but the problem I'm having conceptually with this bill, and I hope that this is clear to the audience, is it's great that you and I can come together, like we said, on the issue with wages. But the problem is you're saying it almost as if we just have different opinions. But the data from the BLS reflects what I said with regard to the unemployment rate. And the data from the BLS reflects what you and I happen to agree on with regard to wages. But I think we're getting a confusion between what the data says and what an opinion is, right? But those aren't the same thing.
Data and opinion are two different things. Yes, okay. I will grant you that. I will absolutely grant you that.
Do you believe that over the next 4 years, we may see some kind of a slowdown or correction when it comes to the job growth numbers that we've been seeing, as well as the stock market growth that we've been seeing? And if so, do you think it will depend on who the next president is, or do you believe that we're simply coming up on a correction to the economy, regardless of who is the next president?
Well, that's very interesting questions, because you're looking at correction and you're saying in the job growth, correction in the market. I have been one that has been saying all along that this market ultimately will have a major collapse. And I believe that much like the Japanese market did back in the early 90s, when it went from 40,000 down to less than 10,000, much as a 75% collapse, I think the same thing will happen here. The jobs, I think we're already seeing it, David. I mean, you're looking at the amount of pink slips that are being given out in the oil patch. You're seeing now, just most recently, the announcement today of Staples and what is it, Home Depot or Job Depot or whatever, and the combination there, hundreds of thousands, 100,000 people, thousands of businesses or thousands of stores will be closed, and there will be a lot of people laid off.
Yeah, but again, Bill, I think that when we look at anecdotal instances of retail job slowdowns, that does not necessarily tell us something broadly about the economy, because in part retail is suffering because of the development of technology that makes it so people don't necessarily rely on those retail stores. But the job growth continues. We've had record consecutive month after month job growth dating back something like a decade, don't you think? You just
No,
don't, it seems like you just don't believe the data.
no, I don't believe the data. I mean, let's start. We should have started from that point.
Did you
No,
believe the data from the BLS under other presidents, or did you always think that it was untrustworthy?
No, I have felt that it has gone aggressively. I mean, you can go back to George Washington and you can see that information provided by various presidents, sometimes you have to look at it with a jaundiced eye.
But
But
Bill,
I think,
again, we're talking not about information concocted by presidents. We're talking about an organization that has measured economic indicators in the same way for decades. So I think it's a moot comparison to say, hey, Washington made up some stuff.
well, I think you're naively thinking that any of these organizations are politically
Neutral?
isolated. You would say so. So your position, like on the Federal Reserve, would be, well, it's not a political organization. It's not under the government, so it
But
has no.
again, I'm not talking about the Federal Reserve. I'm
No, I
talking
understand.
about the BLS.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that I believe that the BLS puts numbers, and as I said, 2 plus 2. What does it need it to? What does it need to be?
So you're saying that the BLS simply does what the president suggests?
I am saying, if we go that bluntly, yes.
All right. Well, I would love to see some evidence of that. I'm guessing you don't have it today, and it coincides with us being out of time. But I would love to have you back. I think it's great, Bill, that at least we agreed on the fact that wage stagnation is a serious issue. We probably would disagree as to what's causing it, but at least we agreed on that, right?
Well, David, every long journey, as the Chinese say, starts with one step, and I think we got at least one step today.
We have. Check out Bill Tatro on townhall.com. Thanks for being on, Bill.
Thank you, David.